I've just found that LinkedIn gives back what you give it. So if you're on there supporting other people, commenting on their things, liking their things, like it is the cheapest and easiest way to support your friends because a like on their post gets them more eyes. And so the more you're giving, the more people are willing to give to you when you do a launch. The other thing is obviously, and I know you guys talk about this, but if you're going through the work to make a podcast episode, you're writing out, hopefully your content, and you've got a lot of other content that you can use in story form on LinkedIn. So it's not just the videos or the images. You can also obviously pull from it and use it in so many different ways.
Welcome to the Pod Circle podcast, where we bring practical tips and insights for every podcaster.
Whether you're just getting started or you're already a seasoned podcast pro, these episodes dive into all the things that matter most to you. So today, we're bringing you another episode all about the power of LinkedIn. So make sure you checked out the first two episodes where we talked about how to utilize LinkedIn both for your personal brand and to grow your podcast. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to our channel on YouTube if that's where you get your podcasts, because we post all of our episodes and additional YouTube shorts. So follow along with this episode and catch up on past episodes. So let's jump in for a pod circle first. We are bringing on an outside expert to help us. And we thought we would bring someone in that we both really enjoy and who has worked hard over the last couple of years to consistently show up and build her LinkedIn presence. So, Kyle, who are we introducing today?
Yeah, this will be an easy one. Have it on my wife, Kristin Cummings. Again, we've been talking about LinkedIn lately, and I can't talk about or think about LinkedIn without thinking about Kristin because she has really worked hard to grow her presence on there. So I thought, okay, we're talking about how LinkedIn can grow your podcast. Why don't we just zoom out a little bit and get some practical tips just on growing a LinkedIn following in general? I think for people that are, Mackenzie and I very much in the business podcast space, I don't think that you can have a business podcast without leveraging the power of LinkedIn to grow your podcast, but also just build your business in general. So welcome, Kristin, to the pod.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so give people a little bit of your background just with LinkedIn in general. I'll go ahead and tell people, I think I knew you when you had 0 LinkedIn followers, and now you have over 8,000. You hit some big milestones this year. I remember at the beginning of the year, you're like, my goal is at the end of 2024 to have 7,500 LinkedIn followers. And I think you just blew past that like a month ago, and we're only halfway through. So just give us a little bit of just kind of broad background with your LinkedIn journey.
Yeah, I definitely undersold myself on my goals this year, but I feel like most of us, I've had a LinkedIn for a really long time. Like after college, somebody told us we should all get one. So we signed up and we made profiles, and then we occasionally got on to look for jobs. 3 years ago, when we were making a lot of big leaps at the same time, I left my job I had been at for 9 years, started Virtual COO, my company. We left to travel full time. I just sort of on a whim, honestly, decided to tell the story on there. It is a much more written-driven platform than some of the others. So I was sort of writing out like, hey, I quit my job without a plan, and it resonated with people. I did not go into it with a plan, I'll be honest, and say that. But it just felt like timing-wise, I was leaving, I was starting and looking for client work, and why not try on LinkedIn? So I started telling the story of what I was doing very much in real time, and it was like a fun outlet. I found it to be very supportive. Unlike other channels where you may not get a lot of feedback when you post, I found people to be really kind and like tell their stories of quitting a job without a plan, starting a business, giving advice, sending messages. And I met kind of through friends of friends, a few of my first clients that way. So I just kept it up. And now we're 3 years later. I've kind of had some ebbs and flows with it, especially being on the road, but really decided this year that I wanted to focus on putting a lot of attention there, which is why I've blown past my goal by June.
That's incredible. Like the goal you had for 12 months, you got in 6. That's really, really awesome. When you say you have found clients there, what has that process looked like, and kind of how does your strategy of just telling your story resonate on LinkedIn?
Yeah, early on, I always tell folks, like when you're first starting, a lot of your early clients are people that you know or people that you know who introduce you to people. And for me, putting my story out there on LinkedIn was a way that I kind of told everybody in my network about what I was doing, and I didn't have a huge network at the time, but it flagged some folks who were kind enough to make introductions for me. So those early clients were all referral based. Most of the folks who have been clients since then honestly have been loose referrals, friends of friends. But I have found posting on there keeps you front of mind. I have people who turn up and say, hey, I know this company who just lost their COO. I'm introducing them to you. And it just tends to feel like the more you put yourself out there, people make those connections for you.
And even that word networking, it kind of, I think a lot of us maybe get a bad taste in our mouth. And I know you to be someone who is very genuine in how you connect with people. So how have you kind of traversed that? And have you found LinkedIn to be a place where authenticity kind of wins out more than maybe some of the other things we might associate with networking?
I mean, like anywhere else, I feel like there's fluff on LinkedIn, and there are people who have grown their networks through being loud and kind of like icky. But there's a lot of folks who I found are just like small businesses, solopreneurs, and they are on there because they want to genuinely build up and talk about the thing that they're doing. They may be scared to do it, but they're like, here I am. And that platform seems more supportive than some of the others, just my own personal perspective. So for me, networking on there has felt like low risk. Like you show up at an event or you start making videos on TikTok, it feels a little more like out there. So for those of us who might be introverted, it feels like low risk. You can talk about what you're doing, meet other people who are doing the same, and hopefully grow your network.
Yeah, I'm curious what advice you would give particularly for business owners that have podcasts that are trying to figure out how to leverage LinkedIn. I guess, what have you seen work well, and maybe what haven't you?
This probably mirrors what we see in life, but I've just found that LinkedIn gives back what you give it. So if you're on there supporting other people, commenting on their things, liking their things, like it is the cheapest and easiest way to support your friends, because a like on their post gets them more eyes. It's similar on all platforms, I guess, in that way. But especially on LinkedIn, the way I understand it to work, it's like if you go on there and you like your friend's comment or your friend's content, then more people are seeing it. And so the more you're giving, the more people are willing to give to you when you do a launch. And so I feel like that's one way. It's keeping your face in front of people. The other thing is, obviously, and I know you guys talk about this, but if you're going through the work to make a podcast episode, you're writing out, hopefully your content, and you've got a lot of other content that you can use in story form on LinkedIn. So it's not just the videos or the images. You can also obviously pull from it and use it in so many different ways.
She's speaking our language, Kyle.
Oh, no kidding.
I've seen your podcast before.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting. And I know early on you kind of made some intentional effort when you decided to lean into the space to kind of optimize your profile and get really strategic in how you were talking about your business, even from like the moment someone sees you or takes that next step to maybe someone that they know that knows someone liked your stuff, and then they end up on your page. What were some of the tips that maybe you would give us about optimizing your profile once you get someone to go from their feed to your profile in particular?
So I think the best advice I've read on this is to treat your profile like your own mini sales page. So when somebody shows up, be selling them one thing and make it really clear what they're supposed to do next, because they may come just to check out, they saw your content, they click on it, make it really obvious. So like all the links should go to a call with you and be, one CTA. So use your header for that, use your tagline for that, use your featured section. I read a lot. I think early on people were using their featured section to showcase like posts that went viral. Then that's something I used to do too. Like, oh, look at this post got 800 likes. Okay, well, it was a post about, how I made tea instead of charging my client for that time. It had nothing to do with what I was doing in business. Like there's no real reason for that to be featured. So I ended up taking all those down, and my featured section is all about ways you can get in touch with me. And that's it. Very easy, very simple, and very direct of like, you've read my profile for some reason. If you want to take the next step, here's, maybe 2 or 3 options, but not 10 options, not more content, just a few ways you can get in touch with me.
I love the simplicity of that. And the other curiosity I have is, you said you started Virtual COO 3 years ago. Do you also have a Virtual COO page in addition to your Kristin Cummings page? And how do you balance those two? We talked a little bit about it in our first episode, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I do have a Virtual COO page, and I do tag it. So anytime I talk about my business, I tag it, and I find that naturally it gets followers. I personally have gone all in on my own personal brand page. I have felt like it is more like approachable. It's person-to-person contact versus If I'm posting content from my company page, it's a little just less approachable. People are not commenting as much. They may like it, but it's not as much engagement. So I tag that page a lot. It has grown somewhat organically. When I created it, I made a fun announcement. Every now and then I'll talk about it or put a post there. But I really have focused on growing my own page and then linking back to it.
That's great advice.
What do you think is the value, because you've had so much success building your personal page, what would you say is the value of a business page or a brand page?
I still think there's value there because I always just think of it, this is such simple marketing, but what I do when I go to look up a company, which is I might see them as a person and then I go click on their company profile and it adds that trust. It builds some trust, it builds their expertise. There may be slightly less personal, but more professional, like versions of a case study, or, I think of it as showcasing what they actually do. So for me, although mine is probably not a perfect example of this because I don't focus on it as much, but I still feel like it adds that value of like a legitimate company. You can see other people who are following it. You can see maybe an example of their services. So for that, I think there's a lot of value.
Yeah, and I like the idea that if you are an organization that has a lot of employees, then if you've got your business page, you can really activate your employees to talk about you and to kind of be mouthpieces and representation for you in the same way that you are for your brand. I think it's just continuing to make advocates of your employees, and then you can kind of point back. So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
As we are rounding out this episode, I think what you are bringing for business owners is so important and needed in this space, especially for those who are kind of on the front end of that growth. And so I wonder if you could tell people where they can find you and how maybe you see Virtual COO partnering with them.
Yeah, of course. So my favorite place to talk is on LinkedIn, actually, Kristin Cummings, and it's Kristin with an I-N, which feels important to me.
And with a K and not a CH.
Yeah, that's true. But that's where I like to talk to people. That's where I like to meet other business owners, business leaders, podcasters, and I'd love to chat there. That's also where I talk a lot about what I do at Virtual COO as a fractional COO and have a fun August challenge coming up if anybody wants to join.
Well, thanks for joining us from the room over. And I really appreciate your expertise. It's been really fun and just cool to see how you've so intentionally grown that LinkedIn audience and the way you just share your knowledge and expertise, and just our life, our 2.5 years on the road, I think was a big inspiration for people. It was fun to see people reach out to you and just be like, how do we do kind of what you and your small family did? So cool how you nurtured that, and honestly, just the dedication of just posting. I mean, for how long did you say I'm going to post every day?
This year, when I really said I want to double down on this, I started in January and said I'm going to post every day for 3 months as an experiment to learn like what days are best for me, what days I get best response, what days like my people are on there and we're talking. And so I did every day for 3 months. My network grew a lot during that time. And I did learn a lot about what works for me, what doesn't. Some people love weekends. I did not love posting on weekends. I didn't find I got a lot of response on weekends. But for some people, it's the opposite. So that experiment really helped me hone that in this year.
I love the testing.
Yeah, totally. And so thanks again for joining us. I know this is kind of a LinkedIn heavy podcast, but if you have any questions or you're thinking about starting a podcast, maybe you're a business owner, maybe you're finding this on LinkedIn, because we'll certainly post it up there, and you want to have some conversations around what podcasting can do for your business and your brand, I would love for you to reach out. You can either, if you're finding me on LinkedIn, I'm at Kyle Cummings, or you can find the Pod Circle page, or you can simply email me at kyle@podcircle.com, and we'll see you next week.